Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. It's Saturday morning, and it's time for Sunrise. I am Alero Idu. How was your week? Well, mine was very interesting indeed. Well, the president was at the United Nations, and he actually addressed the General Assembly yesterday. Okay. Lots of thoughts going on there. You know, he asked for debt forgiveness, and he spoke about Boko Haram and many other things. And then Akwa Ibom State, they are in the news for having Nigeria's first smart building. Now, you might say, what is that? Well, I'm wondering myself. Well, I hear that it is something to do with...
Alelo, wait. So you want to start this program without me? You want to start this program without me?
I'm sorry, Chief.
Ayo one of Ayo Makinde family. You want to start this program, the number one untitled chief.
I didn't know you were a comedian.
I am not a comedian. I am very offended. I'm offended.
You are a chief.
I'm untitled chief.
Oh, sorry.
Please.
Okay. All right.
Think you want to be talking on a Sunrise without me?
Welcome, Ayo.
I doesn't like this kind of. Please, that is what the things we're talking about in this country. Yes.
Have you finished riling?
What is a liling?
He's finished riling and venting. He's back.
Oh, good morning.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, what?
Did we miss you?
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Where is that emoji?
Which one?
The emoji.
Oh my God. My partner is back. He went for a well-deserved rest, and he's back to amuse you all.
Well,
and inform you all at the same time.
I'm sure that you had fun, you had a lot of rest yourself. I mean, you always complain about the wahala that I was giving you, so now...
Yes, I had a break, yes. And I enjoyed my break, thank you very much.
Did.
I enjoyed my break.
Just go back.
Well, there was nobody to try and put me in trouble and put my foot in it, you know, so for that I am very grateful.
Okay, well, I think you began by talking about the president's speech in at the UN.
Yes.
That's it's good. At least we have a face, you know, to the nation, you know, all the issues that the president raised are still there. The question, I mean, you talked about the debt cancellation and all. The question a number of people want to ask is, okay, if I borrowed you money once and you used it well, that's fine. But even as we speak, the Attorney General of the Federation is prospecting with other world leaders, I guess, to repatriate something in the region of $200 million
pounds.
Is it dollars or pounds?
Well, okay.
You know, back to the nation. Definitely money stolen from the country.
Yes.
Possibly some of those monies were the ones that were borrowed, possibly.
Yeah, but the thing is that who's going to want to forgive your debt or lend money to you when they can hear every other time that these monies are only being stolen?
Exactly.
And you're not able to put them to good use because everybody is pilfering.
Well,
not everybody, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, there are fundamental issues around that we haven't even begun to talk about, and we need to. But that's not that. So
talk for another day.
It's a job that the government themselves have to look into, and the issue of food security is a crucial and germane one.
Yes.
We knew this was coming from the beginning of last year.
And we've been talking about it on this program.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those in agriculture will tell you that the issues were always there anyway. So what are we doing to ensure that people, get everything that they need, they desire? We've been talking about diversifying the Nigerian economy for how long now?
Forever.
And agriculture seems to be the beautiful bride, so to speak. How we are addressing that to ensure that we do the needful as far as agriculture is concerned, I think that's another matter altogether. Then I caught the last part of you talking about smart building.
Yes, you have been there, haven't you? What is a smart building?
A smart building is a building that is smart. It's as simple as
You see what I mean? He's back. A building that is smart.
Okay, compare this. Okay, so I think about 2 weeks ago, I started to look for a power case, a power case for my phone. A power case is one that has a battery attached to it. I just Googled, I was looking for it, and guess what? After a little while, every time I was looking for anything, all adverts were directed my way about power case.
Okay.
Simply because
you asked for it. You asked for it. Yeah.
So a smart building is one that can almost think. You know, it's all internet enabled, all wired up, and all of that. So
power.
Oh well, I've been to the building, and it's actually a very, very well thought out structure.
So you arrive there, you're supposed to talk to the door for it to open, right?
No, you wouldn't even need to talk. I mean, even today, ordinary on smart buildings or semi-smart buildings, though you don't even talk. The building, most hotels.
Oh, they just sees you and it opens.
Just opens. There is a sensor.
Yeah, okay. So you are there and there's no power supply.
No.
So you're just standing there waiting for the door to open.
I think it has the building. When we went there, it wasn't fully ready. It wasn't fully ready for commissioning and all of that. So all of the functionalities weren't available to us to look at. The governor was so proud of it. He said, look, when you're done with this interview, you go check it out. And we did. It's actually a very beautiful, beautiful building. And I think that it's something, I'm drawing from something that I heard yesterday. I'd forgotten from whom. I think it was from Dr. Ike, who was saying, when we say government doesn't have business in business, government doesn't have business in business, it's not completely true. But when you say government doesn't have business in running business, that's another thing altogether. Because government needs to do business in order to make money. You know, but who are the people that are running the business that government is in? They shouldn't be government officials. I think that's the point that the man is trying to make.
Who can run it as a business?
As a business, and I think that's the whole idea of the Dakota Towers that your government commissioned yesterday with the vice president there. It's a smart building. It's all internet enabled, and quite a number of things.
I'm very skeptical, I'm sorry, because of the issue of power. And a lot of things in this country hang on power.
Electricity, I think there are three sources of power there.
Which must be automatic.
One of them, of course, is the general power supply from the discos and all.
Yeah.
Then there is generators. But then there is a backup. Once power goes out, there are some things that never go out. Internet, for instance, will never go out because it's on the UPS system.
Okay.
So before the generators kick in and stuff like that, if that is not, I'm just assuming if that is not on automatic, that's the kind of thing that's going to
Well, congratulations, Akwa Ibom State. You're doing things.
And I think it is something that should be replicated in every state, believe me. Because if people have, for instance, look at the popular supermarket chains all over the place. Every state that has it will look, this is our road, So it's something that it's a kind of smart building because internet is the new...
Is life now.
Exactly.
It's life.
So if there is anything that is going to be happening, in every part of Nigeria, the internet is a great facilitator, and we should do everything we can to ensure that we use it.
And I haven't spoken about power in a long time, and I want to say...
When have you been talking about power?
I want to say to our viewers, it is not because there has been power supply. It is just because I got rather fed up of saying the same thing every day. But I need to call them out again, because they're not giving people power. They're not giving us power. Of course, when they were called power holding, Was it Alibaba who said, who made that joke? Well, they are holding their power now, you know.
It's a business now, and there is a lot of questions about how well the business of power, electricity supply, power distribution, power transmission, power generation is being run in the country, and all that conversation is unending. And meanwhile, while the prices go up, the power supply is not available, and then the major challenge that they continue to talk about, that's the discourse, is collecting revenue from people. There is power theft, and all those things are there, but it's all for me.
Ayo Makinde, if your staff, you are NEPA, your staff comes to bypass meter for me so that I cannot be paying plenty money, is that my fault?
That is what they call already home.
Because the customer probably does not know how to bypass the power himself or herself.
How will the customer know?
Thank you. So,
Anyway.
as they say, na dem.
And
That's how we say it in Pidgin.
I don't see how that dem is going to end.
They do them. They cause themselves the injury. Okay.
Menu.
Now, the menu.
Okay, that's another thing in that Dakota Towers. They have a restaurant. Okay, menu. Eye on Rescue Nigeria project as the number one thing on the agenda today. What does that mean? Keep
And
listening.
we're also taking a look at the economy. How is the economy performing? Well, some will say it's still exactly where it is, or is it getting worse?
Okay. Of course, we'll be looking at the 4th Unilag Masscom Alumni Association Distinguished Lecture Series. Find out what that is about.
And then we'll look at where every pregnancy is wanted. Of course. I mean, no marks for guessing that is talking about, making sure that you do get pregnant when you want to get pregnant.
And you don't when you don't.
Thank you.
And the artist of the week is who? Let's keep listening.
I'm not saying anything today.
Okay. You don't want to tell us whether it's a he or a she or a shim?
He is a he.
Oh, so you said something today.
Get the show started. Very dismal stats given there by the former Emir of Kano, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi.
Who is the former governor
Central
of the
Bank
CBN?
governor.
So those figures are personal to him, one would say.
I think that listening to him there, we should actually think. We have to be introspective and take on board everything that he has said and look at ourselves properly and ask ourselves some serious questions. Senegal is ahead of us. Rwanda of yesterday. When did they come out of a genocide? They're doing better. In fact, when I visited Rwanda in 2013, I could see that they were on the road to doing great things for themselves. So I can just imagine what they look like today. But these are, compared to Nigeria, these are all small countries. And they are all ahead of us, and we say we are the giant of Africa. All these things he has said should make us begin to think, right, guys, is it not time for us to do something about our country? Maybe that is the reason that this group of people, this group of people came together and set up the Rescue Nigeria project. And this group is made up of such people as Atahiru Jega, the former head of the National Electoral Commission, former governor of Kwara State, Ahmed Abdul Fattah, Professor Pat Utome, erstwhile Education Minister Tunde Adeniro, and many others. So they have come together and they have formed this non-partisan political group. What do we expect of this group? Or what exactly do we think that this group has in mind? Well then, we have a social commentator in the studio with us this morning. It's my pleasure to welcome Mrs. Julie Odige Oyego. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have two gentlemen joining us virtually. Professor Remy Ayede, who is Professor of Political Institutions, Governance, and Public Policy. Morning, Professor. Well, we assume you're only saying good morning to us.
Yeah.
Okay. And our friend Ezekiel Nya Eto, co-founder Nigeria Project, is also with us this morning. Good morning, Ezekiel. Good of you to join us. Now, let me start with the bird I have in hand. Julie, now, what are your thoughts on this Rescue Nigeria project?
Well, it certainly has my sympathy. And I think on two levels. I understand it doesn't intend to become a political party, a registered political party. Mm-hmm. So I guess I can see the need for this. A movement of the people, if you like, a form of political moral rearmament. So I'm in full sympathy with that. Where I worry is, in this country, how easy is it to move a movement of the people, to establish a movement of the people, to be effective as a non-political body with regard to affecting positively the political space. So I'm of two minds about it, but knowing some of the people who are involved, especially Professor Utome, mm-hmm. I have a reasonable degree of confidence that they will be able to make an impact.
Question want to ask, well, sounds stupid or pedestrian, but really, what is there to rescue?
A lot. I think two things in the main. What's been entrusted to us. You know, I've heard myself saying a lot in the past week. The labors of our heroes will, yes, exactly, will not be in vain. Precisely. And then I look at my grandchildren and I say to myself, how will I explain what I've done to this country? You know, and what my cohort, my generation has done to this country. I mean, we have grandchildren now. I mean, most of us. And you look at how do you explain what we're doing and what we've done? So I think that on two levels, we'd better do something in terms of rescue. And I hope this is part of it.
Okay, let me ask Professor Ayede. I asked that question advisedly because one of the issues that it's so easy to assume that we know exactly what we're doing when we may not. So I asked Madam here, what is there to rescue? So if you would decrypt, Prof, in specifics, what do we need to rescue in Nigeria?
There's a lot to rescue in Nigeria.
That's the problem, Prof. My apologies. That's the problem. I would like us to decrypt, because the challenge with movements, in my opinion, is, look, while we know there is a lot to do, people may not be able to follow if they're around specifics, if it's just so general. Okay, so that's why I'm asking for us to have certain specifics, because a journey of 1,000 miles, we all know, begins with one step.
Well, I think the very significant point that they have made concerning what they want to rescue is that they want to change the recruitment process of those who occupy government office. And I think that's the only point they have made so far. They are saying that the way political parties recruit their leaders or those that they nominate for elective positions don't consider competence, merit, and knowledge. And that they are angling for introducing those criteria as very important feature of the political process. Beyond that, they make very general complaints about the situation of things, which is neither here nor there. And as you know, we have seen this movement previously. They came first in the form of national intervention movement. Then they talk about the coalition for the third force. And then they made quite some impression. People were excited, and then suddenly it fizzled out before the previous general elections, 2015 and 2019 elections. So beyond this issue of getting capable hands in public positions, especially in the higher offices of the state, they are not offering much.
Let me bring same question to Ezekiel Nyaitok. You've been at it for a while with the Nigeria project, so you definitely have some ideas. What are the challenges that you think are right before a movement such as the Rescue Nigeria project? One of the challenges a number of people would probably pick is, look, most of the time, it's the elite that take the lead with such movements as this, but then getting the carry-on of the people, carrying people along, getting their buy-in, sometimes it's an issue. Okay, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Can you unmute your microphone, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Much better. Go ahead.
Okay. I say thanks for having me, and I'm very happy that I'm the third person to speak, not the first or the second, because it gives me perspectives and gives me direction to go. In the first instance, what we have to rescue, Nigeria is a country that runs on almost a single lane, which is like leadership. As of today, even the third arm of government, which is the National Assembly, they are like, what is the president saying? And whatever the president says is where they go. In which case, it comes to whoever is our president at the national level. And that's exactly what happens at the state levels, which is who is the governor. The governor is the law. The governor is the beginning and the end. And when this happens, the question is, have we been having the right head lead the structure? If we've been having, I don't think we'll be the poverty capital of the world. What should we do? I'm happy that our two previous speakers have brought up how every time we are saying this, you see, if we do not interrogate why every time we are saying this and nothing seems to happen, it's that your child is on the theater bed and you are interrogating the people instead of asking, what can I do? Poverty is hitting all of us. Why is Patrick Utomi going up and down? Why is he leaving his business? Why is he spending his resources? In the past 4 weeks, I've been in Abuja 4 times. Every week I'm there every Wednesday for meetings. I live in Uyo. It costs me a lot of money. It's my money. The question is, why is Nyaitok doing this? Why is Bolaji or Ibrahim or Okereke? What is the Rescue Nigeria project supposed to be all about? And who should be doing this? If people like Professor Atairu Jega or Professor Patu Tomi and the rest of the names that have been named have come out to say our leadership recruitment is faulty, we need to change it. I think it's an imperative on every Nigerian to say that makes sense. For as long as we wait for Patu Tomi to carry Nigeria on his head, that shoulder is too small to carry Nigeria. They say that the food that one man...
My apologies for butting in.
Yes.
One thing that I think there's a cultural or historical perspective or angle, so to speak, to this leadership recruitment process. This is what I mean. Over the years, for centuries, we've run a monarchical system of government, traditional system of government, where it's always the head, the Oba, the Obi, or the Emir that speaks. And once that leader speaks, that is it. It would seem like it's that system that we have carried on or carried over into our democracy. And consequently, it's always the person at the top that makes all the difference, that determines where the whole nation or the community goes. So in changing that narrative, what is imperative?
One, we run a constitutional democracy. So you must follow the rules. We can change that. The constitutional democracy says that there is a man called Mr. President at the center, and he's given such enormous powers. And there's nothing you can do about it except to change the constitution. And the same thing happens at the a state level. So the question is, do we change the constitution? And if we are to change the constitution, how do we get to change the constitution? There is a process, unless we want to degenerate into anarchy, which none of us is hoping for. So based on what we have at hand as at today, the thing that we ought to do as Nigerians, especially the elite, all of us in this level, is to say what the Rescue Nigeria movement is doing. What are they trying to do? They want to give us leadership recruitment criteria that makes sense. I think every Nigerian ought to say, amen, number one. Number two, what can I do about it? Let me shock you. Everybody knows me as a very integral part of this movement, but they did not invite me. I invited myself into the movement. Every movement that I see about Nigeria, I don't wait to be invited. I invite myself.
Okay.
I go there and say, what can I do? And I want this to be the attitude of all Nigerians. Let's not wait for invitation. This is our project. This is our country. Let's all move in and say, what can I do? And play our part.
Okay. Now, Julie, the crux of the matter for RNP is our leadership process, or the process through which our leadership is thrown up.
I like thrown up.
Well, it is.
What makes that stand out for you?
We are kind of like vomiting leaders at this point.
Wow.
So,
I'm sorry, Alera.
okay,
I'm sorry.
right. Okay.
That for you sounds like a problem.
You think? Yes.
I'm just asking.
Yes, it is a problem. And I think the criteria that we force ourselves to grapple with are not the criteria that resonate with people on the ground, with the grassroots. I mean, one of my pet peeves is local government and the fact that real power does not reside in the people. Another pet peeve I have is that we've almost completely jettisoned true federalism. And what we have in its place is an over-centralization of power in very few, and for the most part, at least to date, irresponsible hands.
My apologies,
okay?
ma'am. Now,
So-
you talked about over-centralization of power.
Yes.
Where is that coming from? Yes, we have a constitution, but we've had...
We have checks and balances in that constitution. You do know that,
We have checks
right?
and balances in
Right.
the constitution, but getting them done, that's another thing
This
altogether.
is the point.
So, which is, I mean, I always try to reference back and forth, you know, our historical trajectory as a
Right.
country. And you look at it, we've spent quite a number of years, being governed by the military, which is a which has a central command
Centralized, yes,
system.
of course.
And do you think we have transitioned from that? Because unless we transition from that, having a constitution is just like having a notebook.
Well, it oughtn't to be. I mean, in law we say the grand norm, and the Constitution is the grand norm that authorizes, that legitimates all forms of, political leadership in terms of governance, right? So it cannot just be a notebook, and this is why I'm so concerned about how we are undoing federalism rather than reinforcing federalism. Look at the security situation, for example. I hope that the Rescue Nigeria project will address more than just leadership at the top of the apex. Because I think our last speaker is correct. There's leadership potential in every single one of us, and there are therefore leadership obligations and responsibilities in every Nigerian citizen, which we are not exercising. I think waiting to just vote every 4 years or so is pretty inane, if you see what I mean. I mean, there's a level of engagement that ought to be the responsibility of every reasonable citizen. I always talk about the quality of citizenship in our country. What is the quality of this citizenship? Some of it is what you demand, but a lot of it is what you give. So if the RMP is confining itself to how political parties zone and how we vote and who eventually gets into the National Assembly or State House.
Gets thrown up, as you said.
well, I was quoting Alero, which I thought was brilliant, by the way, then it's inadequate. Because our problems, I think, are deeper than that. But you've got to start somewhere. As the gentleman said, the journey of 1,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles, always starts with one step. And I think it's a great step. I hope people will identify with it. But I hope we can continue to articulate the essence of what it is that this country is lacking, is missing, so that this movement can embrace as many people and as many consciences as possible.
Yeah, Prof, in this part of the world, we don't seem to need anything special to become a politician. And we throw up that word now as if it is a profession. What do you do for a living? I'm a politician. What is that? In other climes, people actually have to attend certain places, be members of certain places, have to have been important personalities in their local surroundings before they can actually look to go to the center. But all that doesn't apply in our country. Are you thinking that maybe RNP is going to throw up all this so we can talk about them and interrogate them properly to have effect on the results of our elections?
Yeah, if you look at the history of the movement, they are really concerned about issues like that. But, those kind of issues are not issues that you resolve by the kind of way they are organizing. What you find is that at some point, they get sucked into the political process because underneath this expression of concern for the challenges of Nigeria is often the individual political ambitions of those who are part of that movement. And you will see when the movement gains some traction, it's usually when an election is at hand, and you see them, in the media making the rounds. But the kind of picture that you are envisaging requires a sustained effort, and it's difficult to also argue completely that those so-called politicians in Nigeria have not started from the grassroots. If you look at many of the politicians that we're talking about, some of them actually started from the local level, some from the state level, and then they are up where they are. Because again, the situation as of 1999 is no longer the situation in 2021. We have had 20 years or 22 years of democratic rule, and people have had time to have sustained presence in the political process. And if you look at abroad as well, whether it's the United States or Britain or Germany or even other African countries, you will find that, yes, people make a career in politics. And there's nothing to be worried about concerning that. And I think one very important point that I think the movement has always emphasized is the focus of governance, the quality of those who govern, the goals that they set, and how they go about achieving those goals. They are saying that it seems that there's something wrong with the movement process because those who are in government seem to forget the fine values. And some of them are actually in the Constitution. What we call the directive principle of state policy. You see, why does the Nigerian government exist? What purpose is it supposed to serve for ordinary citizens? These issues which Mrs. said about the Constitution, the ground norm, are really available for anyone who is committed to change. But what we have is that when people get into political positions, they are taken away by other interests. And what the Rescue Nigeria project is saying is that we can't continue with that kind of focus. In organization, we talk about goal displacement. So they put aside the purposes of the government, the purposes of the Constitution, and then they are chasing other issues, which are often at variance with the common good. And I think that's the point. How do we then go about it? They are suggesting that it's probably because the recruitment process is bad. Those who are in government don't have character. They don't have the required knowledge to be able to drive the machineries of government to bring out good policies and see them through implementation. And they are also saying that they want people quality, that is knowledge, and such criteria that they think are lacking in the current leadership. They want people with knowledge, they want people who are wise, people who are committed to the national common good, to be those that are recruited. And they say the current recruited system, the political parties, close the door to such people because, again, it emphasizes money, it emphasizes where you come from. It has nothing to do with merit. And they are saying merit is very important. And now they are saying they are not going to be a political party. They are not going to contest the election frontally. What they are really committed to is how can they bring these values into the existing political parties so that the parties can then be tools for pursuing the kind of agenda that they think is good for this country. And they are also thinking that they can do this only if they have a mass buying into the ideas that they are putting forward. And exactly how they are going to do that is where the big challenge is, because the political parties are set in their ways. Many of them have also been part of these political parties. I think that they should not just be organizations outside the mainstream political parties. They should find a way of engaging the political parties in a manner that using their influence and their presence in those parties, they can cause change within the political parties. And I think that that's the hope that they carry.
Hope. Yeah, that's somebody's name, actually. Ezekiel, RNP has says that we are in this leadership conundrum precisely because the leadership recruitment mechanism in its political parties is flawed. So how do you think that we can discuss this with political parties so that they can, I use that expression again, so that they can throw up people who can actually do the job, not just patronage, money bagism and all that? My coinage.
I'll tell you, yes, because I've been in 8, I've contested the election twice and might likely do it the third time. I've been the chairman of a national party, and I've been involved, before I left the PDP, almost at the highest level. I was the chairman of the Ward and Local Government Congress Committee of the PDP to one of the states. And if you're in the politics, you know that this is one of the highest positions you can hold, because the Ward and Local Government Congress Committee chairman sets up the structure of the party in the state, and I'd reached that level. Now, what is happening between the Rescue Nigeria project or movement and other movements that, like the National Consultative Front, is that we are having engagement at different levels, and at the right time we are funneling. We are extremely organized. This is the first time that we are having a movement that starts about 4 years to an election year. The reason is that in the past 2 years, we've been meeting, we have been talking, we've been discussing, we've been dialoguing, we've been networking. We had the first, Rescue Nigeria project, which was aired on, carried live and was national. And the second one is coming up October 1. What I'm trying to say is that this is not an isolated case. This is a coming together gradually of the different segments that have been dialoguing. This is the first time that has happened so early. And it's a script that we have. People are saying, oh, where is the political party? I'm a member of the political party, mega party, committee. So I can tell you that in the past 1 year, we've discussed with the other 16 political parties outside of APC and PDP, and then we are getting into mergers, we are getting into agreements. Then we also have to come to an agenda. There is a constitution review or update or enactment process, headed by, let me not call names here, but eminent, think of the biggest names in Nigeria, they are there. So we are working from all fronts, and we've been working. So now we have a constitution that will soon be able to tell Nigerians, this is what makes sense. And once Nigerians buy into it, even if it cannot be enacted now, because I doubt it can be, they can see that when this new government comes in, which is what they call the third force, there is a document that they are guided by because they produced it even before they came into power. Before now, you always had alignment of last minute of these people coming together and trying to make it work, and then the details are not worked out properly and it collapses. But I want to tell us that this is a song that has been well written and that we are taking it in stanzas. And I think that by the time we come to bring it together very, very soon, Nigerians will see that there has been a good, orchestra that has been set up. Finally, let me say this. Why we say it's non-partisan for now is that there are good people in APC. There are good people in PDP. There are good people in ADC. We are starting to identify these good people because painting all of them with the same brush is not doing us any good. So we are making sure that we are bringing these like minds together. That's number one. If I call myself a good person, I was in PDP. So why do I want to condemn everybody in PDP? That's not right. They are good people, even in government as at today. They are just working under an environment that is extremely unconducive. And we're trying to see how we can come together. That is number one. Number two, we are looking at electoral reforms, the electronic transmission of results. On October 1, we are having a national consensus. We are having a national body talk on it from all sides. APC will be there, PDP will be there, because there are people on all divides who are saying, give us credible electionary process.
So
now,
essentially, Mr. Nyetok, you are saying that there are plans to evolve RMP into a political party.
I am saying that there is a plan for the men and women of conscience to empty themselves into a particular structure. If the structure of APC does not allow, the structure of PDP does not allow, we will not keep quiet again. We'll form the third structure where these like minds will come into. Okay. So we're having that at the back of our minds and we're working at it. Okay. And so far, there's maximum success achieved because I'm a member of that committee. But one thing we are resolved is that in 2023, Nigerians will have an option.
Okay.
It's not to choose between six and have it.
Okay, let me bring this to Madam here in the studio. One of the challenges, I mean, you've listened to both gentlemen speak about this issue. And like you, maybe I haven't caught the bug from you. I'm very much interested in percolating this, whatever it is that is Nigeria, down to the barest, to the grassroots, to the people who really do the voting.
Absolutely.
Because most of the elites, and one of the accusations we've had many times is that the elites don't even go out to vote. They just sit there and then at the end of the day,
pontificate.
So, the elites are talking. Getting the message down to the grassroots, one. Secondly, getting the buy-in of the people when the message gets to them in the grassroots, that's quite a task. There's a high level of poverty, high level of unemployment. The issues that people have to grapple with on a daily basis is right there in their faces.
Absolutely.
Now, giving them a message as opposed to giving them money, it's going to be quite a hard sell.
If the message comes from the people themselves, then it's not a hard sell. I think this is the issue. I mean, I fully identify with what RMP is trying to do. It's the quality of leadership and the way that we identify leaders, appoint leaders, elect leaders, etc., etc. My thing is the quality of citizenship. We've never taken the Nigerian voter seriously as a citizen, who the people who are eventually chosen to lead us, they're given, it's a trust, and it comes from the people. And every 4 years, notionally, the people have the opportunity to withdraw or renew that trust. I think the conversation really has to be about what the people believe, what the people want, what the people need, and what the people are prepared to invest in. Because it's not just, and this is where the money problem comes, it's not just, look at what we did in Edo State last September. It's exactly a year ago now. It was the people. There's the only explanation for what occurred on election day that day. It was the people, the resolve of the people, the hope of the people, to borrow again from you. If we can harness that once again, in a very constructive way, not just in terms of the individual saying, what's in it for me, but where are we going? Where are we going as a people, as a community, as a nation? Those are the questions that we need to encourage the people. If we can foster that kind of inquiry, if we can foster that kind of engagement from the people, then you won't get the sorts of leaders that we are complaining about now.
Well, Prof, let me ask you in the same vein, but speaking to a specific public now, whom you raise, by the way, whom you teach on a regular basis, the young people, youths. I mean, you can tell, Prof, from your interaction with them on a daily basis, how interested or not they are in Project Nigeria. The fact that to a large extent, many of them feel that they have been left behind. Jobs, I mean, you heard the statistics from the former Emir of Kano saying that a good number of them, just a fraction of them get employment at the end of their studies. So they have been left behind, and we want them to be a part of the Nigeria project. How do we involve them?
Well, I think that's a very important point that I think the NLP will need to look at. First, we say, okay, there's diversity of youth. Those in the university are also part of the elite, or what we call the emerging elite. They are the privileged sector of the youth. And then we have others who have even greater challenges than the one you have mentioned in terms of employment opportunity, because the door or even moving ahead is closed to quite a number of those who are not among the elite. And you saw what happened when the NSAS protests unfolded and eventually unraveled, because at some point the other categories of youth who were not the original arrowhead of the campaign hijacked the process, and you saw the violence that came out of it. We have a huge youth problem, and I can say this because I engage them on a daily basis. There are those who are completely frustrated with Nigerian projects, who don't think that there is any hope for rescue. And I think that's one thing that the NRP, it make the NRP very important, because they are emergent, the issues that they are putting on the table give hope that not all members of the elite ignore this challenge, that some of them are truly, really concerned about it. Now, for those there are others among the youths who think that what they really need to do is to find a way out of the challenge that they face in Nigeria. And these are very dynamic and very promising members as a segment of the youth. You can see them in IT, you can see them demonstrating on common entrepreneurial skills and a can-do spirit. So the youth is that diverse. And I think what the NLP can do is to reach out to the universities, reach out to institutions of higher learning and other levels in the educational system, and see how they can connect with, because there are also other organizations who are doing wonderful things. I think that's another thing the NRP should think about. They should not confine themselves to the political party alone, because I think it's a huge project. It's not a project that you can resolve within before the next election. It has to be something that will be ongoing, a real movement, because movements are built around ideas. And I think the more that they get these ideas to the right people, to the right sector, including the young people, the better for the movement and also for the country. So we need to look at the youth in their diversity and see how we can reach out to them concerning the concerns that we feel about Nigeria, and recruit a lot of them into sharing the vision and into putting it as part of their life and vision. Because the universities keep churning out these youth, and we talk about unemployment and the frustration that they face, but they also hold great potential. And a lot of them are doing great things in spite of the challenge that we have in Nigeria today. And we need to recognize this diversity of the youth and in our plan, for transformation of Nigeria. That would be my take concerning that segment of the Nigerian society.
Okay. Ezekiel, Some would say that RNP has its work cut out. For as long as politics remain the shortest cut to being wealthy in Nigeria, how are you going to streamline all these processes so that only the capable get through to become leaders?
You know, this panel is just awesome. I don't know how you people got it together. Because if you look at my sister Julie, in spite of her looking extremely elitist and everything, her concern is the youth, the grassroots. And I find that extremely inviting and reassuring. And you look at Prof. Ayede, he is talking about the youth, an extremely important segment. And this just typifies exactly what we are trying to do at the NRP, in the sense that we are looking at different sections, different diversities. We are looking at the youth. We are looking at the women. In the women, we are looking at the career women, and we are looking at the market women, and we are looking at the farm women, the farmers. We are looking at the elderly. We are looking at the teachers, academic institutions, and we are trying to build a bridge. That's why we have a body like the National Consultative Front. This body has all these segments, and then there's a networking. Let me leak a secret. Professor Patutomi is the co-chairman of the National Consultative Front, okay? So we're not looking like this narrow prism of this one body, NRP, and that's it. No. It's agglomeration, a conglomeration, an aggregate of the different. I had the Nigeria First project. The same way, I want to formally, I went there myself, but I want to formally invite my brother Ayede and my sister Julie. Let's come in, and I invite them on representative capacities as Nigerians that look at different perspectives, and together we'll be able to form a body that caters to every segment of the population. Let me just say a little thing about the youth, which Nigerians need to know. There are two countries. There are two countries today. One country is called Nigeria, and the second country is called Niger.
Yeah.
You need to look at that. The youth have been able to create a country for themselves. And in Niger is actually driving Nigeria internationally. Niger is Nollywood. They are young people. They are the people that are making us the third biggest film industry in the world.
It's 10 o'clock.
Niger is music. And you look at the likes of the Wizkids, the Two-Face, and the rest, they are giving us the waves. You know, Niger is fashion. Niger is everything. Niger is IT. And you talk of the young people that are really moving us globally. But we have not come to terms with this by creating, look at IT. You have 10 eggs and one egg is rotten. And the rotten egg is smelling so much that you just castigate the youth. The youth of Nigeria are extremely cerebral. They're extremely focused. They're extremely patriotic.
I know that if I leave you to it, the youths are they're like your primary demographic. But I really do understand. We're wrapping up on this segment. But madam, I'd like to take your last words on this, and that's specifically talking about the youth, especially since you said earlier. I mean, you're a grandmom, and you know one of the fears that I've heard elderly Nigerians like you talk about is, what kind of nation are we going to leave for our children when we're all gone? So, in terms of our engagement with the youth, there is the opinion that we are not speaking their language. Mm-hmm. Now, transiting from where we are,
we're in Nigeria, they're in Niger.
So we have to transition Nigeria.
So getting the visa to go from Nigeria to Niger to speak like them and with them, how do we begin that journey?
Respect. Respect. You know, as I was saying before, just as we've not really taken voters seriously between elections, we don't take our young people seriously. And they really are the pivot that might take us into the future. We've not done well. And we've not done well by our children. I think also that the overemphasis on university education is not serving us. We heard from Sanusi that probably 9% of our graduates will get jobs. They're creating jobs. They're creating jobs. It's tough, but the 91% for the most part are aware. They have no illusions about what Nigeria has to offer Niger, and they're forging ahead on their own. And so I think what they deserve from us is respect.
Well, that's a good place to anchor this segment. Thank you very much. Mrs. Julie Odigye-Oyego is a social commentator who was with us in the studio in Lagos, and we had joining us virtually Professor Remi Ayede, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, as well as Ezekiel Inya Etuk, founder, Nigeria Project. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Sunrise will return in just a moment with another interesting conversation. Do join us.
Well, thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. The economy, that's what we want to talk about now. Beyond the figures, beyond the statistics, beyond the data, is the reality. Prices of food and other commodities continue to rise along with the exchange of the dollar to the naira. It still beats me how tomato prices rise simply because the dollar and the naira are not friends. But
Cost of fertilizer.
I don't fertilizer that we create in Ojota.
Well, there's some foreign component. It's like we were talking about gas before you went on leave. I mean, we produce gas in Nigeria, but
Please don't remind me. Don't remind me.
The 12.5 kg of gas is now 6,500 in some places.
So
it's higher in some.
It's very, very, very interesting times that we're finding ourselves in when we look at 1980 to now. The dollar was a servant, so to speak, to the naira, and what we have now is a completely different.
Okay, to your question, yes, the figures would appear to be disconnected from, reality. But again, if you also look at it critically, they also tend to reflect, a bit of what we find. Take the GDP figure, for example. The latest figure we have for GDP for second quarter of 2021 talks about 5.01%, year on year. And that's largely because of the fact that the previous year, about the same period the previous year, the GDP was negative, in a negative territory, by as high as 6.10%. So the base effects, played a lot of role in the GDP figure that we got for second quarter of 2021. If you also look at inflation rate is, we are told, is decelerating at now at 17%, about 17%. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the prices are coming down. It simply means that they are rather rising at a slower rate. That's the information that figure contains. But if you look at other indicators, you will also get an idea that those reflect reality. Like the poverty rate, for example. The poverty rate in Nigeria, very high. You look at the unemployment rate. The latest figure we have at 33%. Okay, again up from just a little above 20%. So you realize that the macro indicators are not, actually improving. Actually improving because even if you take the case of the GDP, the GDP report also said that quarter on quarter, the economy actually fell, quarter on quarter. So GDP growth is expected to have a positive impact on, say, unemployment, for example. But in a situation where the GDP growth is rising and unemployment rate is also rising, of course, you notice, there is a disconnect, and that disconnect is arising from the fact that the GDP growth is not seen to be an inclusive one. Okay, an inclusive one in the sense that you're looking at what is even driving the growth in the first instance. If you look at the second quarter report, yes, the non-oil sector drove growth. But what are the sectors that's actually driving growth? They may not really be the employment-generating sectors. If we, for example, are growing the oil sector.
My apologies, Prof.
The oil sector
my apologies, just a second. I think that really is the issue. The fact that the figures are there, but then they are not reflecting in creating employment, dropping, consumer prices, even the interest rate, with which, micro, small, and medium businesses would do business, or even any business at that would do business. But let me take the opening comments of Johnson Chukwu, who is MD Cowrie Asset Management Limited. Good morning and thanks for joining us. So first of all, what would be your first shot at this conversation that we are having? On the one hand, the inflation rate seems to have slowed down, well, marginally, the prices of foods, but it would seem like money is still quickly escaping the pockets of Nigerians.
Thank you, Yaya, for having me. When people talk about the disconnect between the economic data that is being published and the reality on their pocket, you just mentioned the issue of inflation. And if you look at the inflation figure at 17.01%, what that means is that between August 2020 and August 2021, the average price of goods and services have increased by 17.1%. It means that any basket of goods and services you bought for 100 naira in August 2020, you are buying it 117 naira in August 2021. And for a person whose income has not increased, and how many people have had an increase in their income by 17%, they will feel they can no longer afford the same quantity of goods and services they afforded last year. And as at this time last year, they were already complaining of difficulties in even meeting up their needs. And that has further deteriorated. So when you tell them inflation rate is moderating, they wonder, what do you mean by that? But what the data is only saying that the rate at which prices have been growing is actually slowing down. The speed, or if you want to use the common mass language, the speed at which these prices are increasing has slowed down. Just like saying the vehicle was running 100 kilometers per hour and decelerated to 80 kilometers per hour. It's still running. It's still at a top speed, but it hasn't stopped at it's not stationary. But what people are looking for is a reversal of what you call deflation. And that is not going to happen in the near future. As long as you're seeing increasing rate of inflation, investors are going to, consumers are going to struggle with recognizing the fact that we are saying the inflation rate is decreasing.
While, consumers continue to struggle, investors continue to pour into the country. At least that's the information that we get from people, from the authorities, that investors are always, I've listened to Mr. Babatunde Fashola, for instance, say a number of times, there has to be something that we're having. Investors continue to pour into the country, and yet the consumer prices are, abysmal. Is there something that we're missing?
In the first place, I don't know where the minister took that figure from. The figures at my disposal available to me is contrary to that. If you look at capital importation in the second quarter of this year, total capital importation was about $874 million, down from $1.9 billion in the first quarter of this year. Total foreign direct investment in the second quarter of this year was about $77 million. And like I said, total investment that came into the country in form of foreign direct investment, portfolio investment, and other inflows, other investments, was total just about $870 million. first quarter this year was $1.9 billion. It was the second quarter was less than half of first quarter. So it doesn't prove that we are seeing an inflow of investors into the country.
The figures are not, I mean, I'm not talking about something that I got from him maybe yesterday or day before yesterday, perhaps. I mean, it just occurred to me that even while, I mean, the economy had been gradually going the downward path, so to speak, but over time, I have heard him and a number of other people say, look, what exactly is the issue here? Perhaps it is something that some of us are just missing, unless my memory is serving me wrong here. But let me take this back to Professor Uwaleke. So I don't know what you would say is our challenge here. One of the things that a number of people have pointed to is the fact that we are a consuming economy, not a producing one. And as a result of that, getting the economy to fly as we would want it to would be a challenge until we start producing. That's a conversation many people have raised over time. How quickly do you see that happening?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how quickly do I see that happening? It might take a while because it's a function of many factors. It's a function of the environment we'll find ourselves, the business environment, just as you had, we are not getting the level of investments that we ought to have, relative to peer countries. If you compare us with South Africa, for example, the level of investments, in Nigeria, is quite low. And that is rubbing off negatively on a whole lot of things, including the external reserves, where you find the crude oil sales still accounting for 90%, of forex. So investments into this country, may not, come in at the level that we one would expect with the uncertainties that we'll find, in the economy, with the level of insecurity, that we have in the economy, with the state of infrastructure that we have in the economy. So these are things that shape investments into the country. So to put a timeline, I would say that will take quite some time, because until we fix these things, until we fix insecurity, until we fix infrastructure, the ease of doing business generally, including issues around, taxes. I think the quantum of investments into this country may not really be to the level that one would wish. Before now, the level of capital importation, had been on the relatively high side, but in recent times, that has dropped. Of course, not helped by the COVID the crisis, and for that to to return to pre-COVID status, we may need to do more, especially in relation to insecurity.
Mr. Chukwu, now you've left me quite confused. I mean, not that I understand all these things about the economy very well. You said prices are rising, but they're rising very, very slowly, right? But incomes are not rising at all. And if you look at the basket of prices that I have in front of me, they seem to be the staples. Bread is there, yam is there, oils are there. We can't cook without oils. We eat a lot of yam in Nigeria. We eat bread. We can't eat eggs. We can't eat meat because the prices are rising every day. And the poor, hapless Nigerian is left with a static income. What does he do?
Okay, let me start by saying that what I said is the prices are rising, but they are rising not very, very slowly. So the key thing is that because at 17%, that is not slow at all. In other countries, inflation rate is in the region of 2-3%. Mm-hmm. But back to what we are saying, the key challenge that we have in the economy is partly because the major consumption, what accounts for the largest consumption of average Nigerians, is where the pressure is coming from. Food inflation. Food inflation is about 20% in the month of August, was about 20%. What that means, just like I said it earlier, that over the past 12 months, the average price of food items have increased by 20%. Of course, that means that some have increased by 40% and some may have increased by 5%. So issues like tomato, beans, yam may be the one that have suffered the greatest increase. And we know why this pressure is coming from the food inflation angle. Because if you take out food inflation, the other food items or non-food items, the increase was only about 13.4%. So if we can bring down the food inflation rate to the same level as other items, then our inflation rate will be about 14%. But the challenge we have with the food inflation is this. We are having a situation where farmers have been displaced from major farming zones of the country. They can't go to their farms. They now need to pay taxes to some ruffians or whatever you call that they can get to their farm. And they even have run the risk of even being kidnapped after paying the ransom. So a lot of people have abandoned their farms. I have two friends who have massive farms, one in Edo State, one in Ondo State. Both of them have abandoned their farms. And these are commercial farmers. They've abandoned their farms. So that will tell you the multiplicity of the number of people who cannot no longer go to their farms to produce. Talk less of the peasant farmers in the northeast, in the northwest, in the north central that have abandoned their farms, that live in IDP camps. Until we address the issue of insecurity, we are going to continue to deal with the issue of food inflation, because at 20% food inflation, an average household has been pushed further into poverty.
Well, my apologies, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. The comment that I said earlier was actually ascribed to Mr. Rauf Aregbesola, and it was just as recent as yesterday. It says that between August 2019 and now, the federal government has granted work permits to over 12,000 expatriates, added that the opportunities available to investors in Nigeria are quite profitable, essentially saying that despite our challenges as a nation, the country remains a choice location for investors. Now, that is ongoing. So one of the things that one would want to ask, you have raised an issue that is quite germane, which is that of security. And so many people have raised that as well. A challenge that a number of people see, which is an opportunity, according to the president of the AFDB, is youths. We seem to be leaving them behind in the entire scheme of things. You referenced, I think it was either you or Professor Waleke that raised the other time, the importance of bringing youths into the scheme of things, especially because of their viability in the ICT sector, the use of the internet, the use of technology, the use of digital tools and all of that. And of course, we all know how big Forex is among the young people now. So in terms of bringing them into this sphere, into this scheme of things, to help push up the viability of the Nigerian economy, what have we been missing?
One of the things we've been missing is in terms of providing infrastructure so that Nigerian youth can operate from wherever they are. They can key into.
My apologies. You heard the president, in fact, over time, has been talking about the reason why the federal government continues to borrow. It is essentially to jumpstart the infrastructure gap in the country. Isn't that enough?
Well, that's why he said we are trying to jumpstart the infrastructure gap or close the infrastructure gap, but we will not close it. And I can tell you, unfortunately, the infrastructure gap is further expanding. And I'll tell you why. If you go to most Western countries today, IT infrastructure, particularly broadband internet service, is now considered as a critical infrastructure the government has to provide. So if you go to a place like England, wherever you are, if you stand in front of a shop, you have free internet service you can connect to. If you go to a shopping mall, you connect at free internet service. You enter a cab, you connect to their free internet service. So in effect, a young person who only has a smartphone can use a smartphone to start a business. In other countries today, that gap, the fact that we don't have, beyond Lagos, maybe Abuja and Port Harcourt, the internet services in the country is very weak elsewhere. When I talk about the infrastructural gap and that is a major constraint to an inclusive, bringing the youth into an inclusive economy, take for instance the issue of agriculture. Agriculture is the largest employer of labor in the country. And most effective labor force are the young people. But the young people cannot stay in the rural areas because there are no roads, there are no lights, there are no water. So the young people keep trying to migrate to the urban areas. And when they migrate, a lot of them have no other skill other than farming unless they have gone to school. And when they get to the urban areas, they are completely excluded from the economic activity because they don't have the skills to fit in. So they are left with only providing manual labor. Right now, acting as labor hands in construction sites. Again, other thing what Nigeria is lacking is addressing the issue of education, quality of education. And our syllabus. Most countries have migrated to what they call STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, which is what equipping the young people in India to develop some of these applications we are keying into. We need to go and look at our educational system and tweak it to be in conformity with what is obtainable in the world today, so that our young people will come with the skills that even if we don't have environment for them here, they can go elsewhere and compete with the world. If we address the issue of infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and when I talk of physical infrastructure, I'm now including broadband internet services. The governments elsewhere are providing that as a critical infrastructure because the world is riding on information and telecommunication technology. We have not even provided roads. That's what the government is trying to close. They want to close the basic infrastructure, transport infrastructure. That's what they're basically focusing on. Then we have to address the issue of the soft issues, quality of education, the content of education, for us to bring our children into the global economic space, not just the Nigerian space.
Now, Professor, Ayo mentioned earlier that we are a consumer nation, which means to a large extent that we require a lot of foreign exchange. How is this going to be made available? Or do you foresee us moving into a position where we do not require as much foreign exchange as we require now?
Even speak to something I had, Ayo talk about that why would the price of Gari go up, for example, if you don't need foreign exchange to import Gari. Of course, when people who are used to consuming something like maybe the semolina or semovita that is imported, when the price of that, goes up because foreign exchange has gone up, you find, some of them, shifting, having no choice but to shift to Gari. So the demand for Gari will now increase because, foreign exchange, because the dollar, has risen. It's now more expensive to import the semolina. So that's called the substitution effect, and it happens. So when people complain that yes, even though the commodity is produced there locally, is rising because the exchange rate is also rising, there is a connection between the two, and that connection can be explained by the substitution effect. The other issue I want to harp on before I address your question pointedly, has to do with the issue of investing in human capital development, particularly education. In this country, we've done, I can say we have done, quite a lot, and reasonably well, especially with the COVID-19 in the area of health. The government, including the central bank, have invested reasonably, I would say, in the health sector, which is also why we saw, if you look at the GDP report, the health sector, has turned positive in terms of growth. But in the education sector, we need to do a lot more. And given the fact that resources are scarce, it's important that we prioritize the funding of education. We can't, afford to say we are funding everything, all at the same time. By priority, I mean, is it possible for us in this country, as they do in other climes, to identify what I call pillar programs or pillar courses and fund them, okay, and possibly encourage people to go into those the programs, either through scholarship or through other incentives. Take agriculture, for example. Agriculture should be a pillar program in this country because of the importance of agriculture. As has been mentioned, it employs over 60% of the population, and as we speak, contributes about 24% to GDP. So if we can take care of agriculture and ensure that we have food security in this country, that will bring down food inflation. And if food inflation, comes down, of course, it's a whole lot of things, becomes easier. One of the ways by which we can do that, as I said, is to say agriculture is a pillar program, and everything along the value chain, including the processing. We have Federal University of Agriculture in this country, Makurdi, Umudike, and Abeokuta. We can give them targets, fund them properly, to ensure that each of the universities is known for a particular product that can also be exported, out of this country to earn forex. So that is the attitude I want us to have, with respect to education. Education that is, we reimagine education to be development driven. Why is it that in this country we keep inviting foreigners to come and do our bridges, to come and do our roads, or to do infrastructure in this country? Why can't we,
on this particular
again,
issue that you have raised of agriculture, engaging the universities of agriculture in the country? The first thing that comes to mind for me anytime issues of education and all are raised is the people that have been taught. On this program, here in this studio, we have engaged a university lecturer like yourself who happens to be in the agriculture space in the university. And we asked her pointedly, how excited are the young people that you are teaching about agriculture? And she was quick to tell us that they are absolutely disinterested. Very, very uninterested. And so if you're talking about us, focusing energy in the area of education, educating people, the young people about agriculture, I would say yes, absolutely yes. But then what is the incentive that we're going to give to these young people to help them to focus, to even be interested in agriculture at the university while they're still in the university, in order to encourage them for the future? Because another 5 years, another 10 years, another 20 years from now, unless we do something now, the problem we're having now is only going to get worse.
Yes, we're on the same page. I think we are saying the same thing. I was talking about incentives by way of maybe scholarship. Okay, you provide scholarship.
My apologies. I'm asking, how do we even get them to
be
interested in the first place? Many of them are not interested.
No, that's an assumption. I don't think that's true.
But we spoke to a professor, a university lecturer like yourself.
It depends on what you're looking at. The agriculture I'm talking about is not the whole agriculture, mechanized agriculture. Okay, you find people are interested in agric engineering, for example. If you have such programs and and are properly funded, I'm pretty sure you have people showing interest in those programs. And I also want to say this, that the government can also, because of the encumbrances around the conventional university system as we find it, under the regulation of the NUC, the government can focus more on institutes. Okay, institutes. If you look at the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the one that ended in 2020, it has very good initiatives in the area of education. It's just that those initiatives have not been implemented. Okay, it talks about setting up post-university skill acquisition centers across mega ones across the federation, because what the youth require are skills. One estimate says that about 600,000 people, graduates, enter the labor market on an annual basis, and that's even using the number that participates in the National Youth Service program. We have not included those that take exemptions, not included those that come from institutions that are not qualified for youth service. By the time you get all this number, it's running to 1 million. Okay. So every year you have 1 million people entering the labor market. How won't you have a high rate of unemployment? So no matter what you do in terms of job creation, okay, your efforts seem like a drop in an ocean. So we need to change our approach to education by prioritizing, having pillar courses, okay, those ones that people can do, such that we end up conserving foreign exchange. As I said, we don't need to get engineers from China or wherever to do our roads. When we have, we can develop the capacity here. It's about priority. If we say engineering is a priority cost, we get that fund, get all these things to fund that properly. And the private sector too, can do a lot. The government can engage the private sector, to participate in some of these, funding schemes. I'm happy that the central bank has been intervening, even in the education sector. Recently, the central bank was talking about, tertiary institutions, entrepreneurship scheme. Okay, that's laudable.
Another
but
issue
again,
to factor into this whole conversation, you talked about us diverting funds into pillar courses, and I think it's a brilliant idea. I hope someone is listening and can take it on. But one other issue that I think it is a little thorny is that of our debt profile and debt servicing. Now, how significant do you see that how do you see the effect of that on the Nigerian economy? Because if we spend, quite a chunk, quite a percentage really, of our budget to service our debts, and it will seem like the debt figures are on the rise all the time. How significantly do you see those debt servicing figures annually affecting our funding and affecting the entire economy, the performance of the Nigerian economy?
Yes, it's actually crowding out funds for development. If we spend as much as, for example, in 2020, we spent 84% of our revenues just servicing debt, and between January and May 2021, the figures I saw, talk about over 90% of our debt of our revenue in servicing debt alone. And I'm sure the government also recognizes that there's a problem, which was why the president, in his address at the 76th United Nations General Assembly yesterday, talked about the debt burden, unsustainability of the debt, public debt for African countries and especially Nigeria. He mentioned that in his speech. So it's actually a problem, even though we say it's a revenue problem. Yes, the revenue problem. But because we have not addressed that revenue, okay, the issue of taking more debts, especially when you take it from outside, becomes a lot worrisome. So I think it's something that you can't overemphasize, that there is need to look at other funding sources, other innovative funding sources outside of that. And this can include, for example, what we call securitization. The private sector, as I said, can be involved in the funding of infrastructure. It doesn't have to be government, okay? And securitization means identifying viable projects, getting their flows, inflows, and channeling them to a special purpose vehicle. So through a special purpose vehicle, okay, these things can be sold to members of the public to invest in. So the government should look at other innovative sources of income outside of borrowing. We can't continue to borrow in this country. We have, I think it's becoming unsustainable given the high debt service to revenue ratio.
Thank you very much, Prof. Bob. Just before we go, Mr. Chukwu, quickly, what are your thoughts? I'm sure you've been following the debate about this latest loan that we're asking for. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, what I would say when it comes to loan is that the problem with loan is not necessarily that government is borrowing. The challenge is always that the borrowing is not slightly going into consumption. If we borrow and we invest in infrastructure or in projects that have the capacity to expand the economy, then the economy will grow to the point that we'll pay back those loans. Some of these loans are 30-year loans, which means if the economy is growing, the economy would have grown to the point that we can comfortably pay back the loan. There's actually no challenge with borrowing. The challenge has always been, what are we deploying the funds that we're assessing as credit into? If we invest wisely, if we invest the borrowing proceeds, the process of this borrowing into critical sectors of the economy, then you will be sure that the economy will expand beyond its current level and paying back loans won't be a problem. So I don't have a problem with borrowing. The problem I have is that we have borrowed largely for consumption purposes, which is why the burden of that borrowing in terms of interest payments is actually beginning to impact negatively on us, because we can't see the impact of the borrowing in terms of expansion in the economy or in terms of the capital goods available in the economy, infrastructural supply.
I wanted to ask you, Mr. Chuku, if you think we should probe the loans over the years, but no, please don't answer that one. For now, I have to thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation. Professor Uche Uwaleke is former head, Banking and Finance, Nasarawa State University. Thank you very much for your time, as well as Johnson Chuku, who is MD, Carry Asset Management Limited. Thank you so much for your time and thoughts. So, Sunrise continues after now. Do stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. This is still Sunrise, and the question I ask is, when shall we reach a time where every pregnancy is wanted? And I have a big question mark at the end of that question. We're talking about World Contraception Day now, and that day is celebrated every September 26th. That's tomorrow. So tomorrow is World Contraception Day.
Now that question you asked, I think I have an answer.
Okay.
When you remove TRA from contraception, that will be World Conception Day. So,
Just that's interesting.
Very. As I was saying, it is a day to create awareness among people about the benefits of family planning and the need to use various modern contraceptive methods, while also promoting the reproductive health of the people and their individual rights to voluntary decisions and choices towards maintaining their reproductive health. Well, we have two doctors in the house who will be talking to us more about this. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Taiwo Johnson, Director, Post-Pregnancy Family Planning. Good morning. And we also have Dr. Tunji Akintade, Immediate Past Chairman, Association of General Private Medical Practitioners of Nigeria, Lagos chapter.
Good morning, ma.
Good morning.
Good morning, audience.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Why are we talking contraception? Dr. Johnson.
Well, so you see, the World Contraceptive Day, as you rightly said, is celebrated annually to create more awareness about contraception. And we're talking contraception because there's a lot of benefits about contraception. We can't even start talking about the economic benefits to Nigeria as a whole. So it's very critical at this time that contraception comes into the picture at this time of governance in Nigeria.
Now, Dr. Akintade, when is the best time to bring up the subject with our children? When is the correct time?
Well, thank you and good morning once again. I think that question is very relevant now. For male, we have it at their reproductive age as well as for female. And that age is between 14 and 49 for females and 15 and 50 for male.
So
you see,
you start talking about contraception when they're 14.
You start talking about contraception when they're 14 because that's when they take a decision on their own. It's not contraception that we're talking, basically, it's their reproductive health. So they have a decision to make.
Reproductive health.
Yes, and they have to take a decision.
Zeroing in on contraception, because I was thinking, isn't that rather early?
It's not. It's not. Because you will, behind the curtain, you don't know what happened. And our statistics has shown that we are not getting it right. Our mortality rate is dropping at an alarming rate. I mean, when you want to look at our climb and compare it to the developed climb, you realize that more women are dying as a result of all these preventable things, from complications of pregnancy and abortion.
So when we talk about contraception, I can see the passion that Dr. Akintade is raising here, but let me come to Dr. Taiwo for a bit. So essentially, when we talk about contraception, since it's all about awareness today, what are we talking about?
We are talking about pregnancy by choice and not by chance. We are talking about women having access to quality and voluntary information and making her choice and decision about what to use and when to use it. We are talking about women having the children they want to and about a woman living a reproductive health life. We are talking about female empowerment. I mean, there are many benefits of contraception, which goes beyond family planning itself. We need to start looking at the other side, the benefits of family planning, even to, as I said, Nigeria as a whole. Family planning for the woman ensures that for women, reduces the fertility rate if adequately done. Let's look at the demographic dividends of contraceptive. What are the economic benefits? What are the social benefits? How would it influence change in the woman? We know that if a woman has the number of children she wants, she can go back to school, she can empower herself. And once more women enter the workforce, there's more productivity. Even as a country. So there are lots of benefits of contraception, which this World Contraception Day aims to project and to create awareness about.
The challenge here for me is who is listening? Because you would agree with me that sometimes the conversation around contraception doesn't even come in where some cultures are concerned. Our cultural beliefs, our traditional practices, our religious, affinities and all of that. Those things definitely get in the way of this kind of message going out.
Yes, I agree with you. And now everybody's listening because now they know the benefits of contraception. Let's start with advocacy. A lot of work has been done on advocacy, even looking at the religious houses. We have in Nigeria now an Interfaith Forum, which is made up of religious bodies of all the different denominations. They've come together. They are looking at the religious perspectives of family planning. What does the Bible and the Quran say about family planning? We have those down. We have books that have been written that have shown that it is shown the various benefits of family planning. So everybody's listening about it. People know more about it. But the question is, what are we doing about it now? What are we doing about it now? We've created a lot of awareness. And when we look at when we started and where we are now, we've made a lot of progress, but a lot still needs to be done.
I think that at this point, we need to say specifically that Nigeria needs to listen to you guys.
Very well.
They say that there are 200 million of us now. And the talk out there is that we are edging towards being an overpopulated country. Which means we must start talking about our population now, which brings into great relevance what you're talking about now.
Very well. Well, let me emphasize here that it is not particularly geared towards reducing the population, because that's another angle that we met some challenges. That's the essence of family planning is to come and reduce our population, no.
Which we need to do anyway, whether we admit it or not. I mean, let's stop playing the ostrich.
The truth about it is that you and I, we are setting up our family based on our economy. What is the size that we are repositioning? So it's just getting the appropriate size for appropriate hole, okay? And beyond that, we are growing. At the same time, we are losing the most important population that we're supposed to be preserving, the women. And that's why we must start talking about, and I'm glad when Dr. Johnson mentioned the issue of advocacy. The government has to put it into the policy, and there must be specific indicators to measure what we have been doing. For instance, when we started these statistics, we found that Rwanda was having 2,400, that's 2,400 deaths per 100,000 of their population. The same intervention we applied, they have reduced to about a little bit over 300 per 100,000 women dying.
From 2,400,
yes,
they're now at 300.
Because of advocacy, because of government intervention, because of the holistic participation of the citizen. But what do we have in Nigeria?
Don't answer that question.
No, we'd like to know our stats.
You were going to answer that question with this question.
Okay.
There is this belief, we reference religious angles the other time, that there are those who believe that it's plural.
As God gives, we take.
You know, and then there is something in Yoruba land, your people. They say you don't count children for the owner. I come follow more. Now, in that regard,
and in other places, they call them God's bits of wood. You don't count them.
So, with these beliefs,
very interesting.
Exactly. With these beliefs, how do you take this conversation out and percolate it down to those people who may never be able to listen to the big English we are speaking here?
Thank you very much. I think I've said it at the beginning. We need to catch them young. We need to start getting the people that matters to start listening to it. Globally, we don't seem to have what other climes have in Nigeria. We have an indicators. We have a lot of policies in Nigeria stacked somewhere. How do we monitor this? If we start, even in the educational curriculum of the students, and it's there, you hide things away from children, that's what they go to look for. That's what they go to look for. In the mindset of our religions, like Dr. Johnson said, we have books that have been written by all these religions. We have the Christian, we have the Muslim books that have been, and there's a lot of advocacy going on. The question is, are we funding this project? Who are the people that are currently funding this project? When will the fund be there perpetually?
Dr. Johnson, in all of this, it seems that it is the woman that gets the brunt of it.
Sadly enough.
If we listen to all this advocacy and we actually practice, it will lead to a reduction in abortions, right?
Oh, definitely. Unsafe abortions.
Unsafe. Okay, there is safe abortion.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is safe abortion?
Okay, I'll tell you what unsafe abortion is.
Let's start from there.
We know that abortion is termination of pregnancy, right? But when it's unsafe is when it's done, when it's not done in a sterile environment and by a trained professional. That is when it's unsafe. And there are many reasons, as you said, that matter that a high number of children would lead to unsafe abortion because the woman doesn't want this pregnancy, but she doesn't have the means of she doesn't have the means to do so. And that is where we talk about missed opportunities. So for these women, are we giving them the right information? So that a woman has 3 children or 4 that she can cater for, and then she now goes to have an unsafe abortion, because you know that abortion is not yet legal in Nigeria. So abortion is done under the pretense of going to either done by unethical professionals. That is why it's unsafe. And so to mitigate that, women have to plan for the number of children they want to have and have the information to do so voluntarily. And that is where we are aiming for as women.
I'm sure the men who are listening to you now are going to say, oh, women have to decide. Okay, so where do we come in, we the husbands?
Okay, yes, we need male involvement. It's very important. Very key right now where we are in Nigeria, male involvement, because we're in a patriarchal society, so we need that male involvement, and we need men to support their women in making a reproductive health choice. We need very critical.
Okay. Well, men should think about it, I would assume.
I have been thinking about that.
Okay. At least it's still in the thinking level, still in the National Assembly. Okay. But let me come to you, Dr. Akitade. Something you said the other time in response to the question Alera asked you about how soon do we start to tell our people. And you said 14 and 15. Some mummies sitting somewhere now, some dad wondering. So I sit my 14-year-old down and I start to talk to him about sex or reproductive health, as you said. There is no way you talk about reproductive health.
Of course.
Well, it is.
So some would say maybe cultural, but in our climate, it's a little too early.
A war.
Honestly, I won't agree with you that it's a late, it's a early. I'll give you.
You are a professional.
Yeah.
The farmer is not.
Yes.
So getting them to see what you see, understand the way you do.
And that's where the advocacy.
And the iron one is not.
And that's where advocacy. You see, there is always a way out of this quagmire. If you can speak to your daughter, if you have created an impediment not to speak with your daughter, I know most men are closer to their daughters, then your wife should be able to speak to your daughters. But you need the conviction of the couple to understand that, look, we need to have this knowledge into the head of these children. Because they do a lot of things that we don't know. It's a social world. If you look into the phones of all these our daughters and sons, you'll be amazed about what they know. So the most important thing is not to hide that knowledge away and assume that they do not know. They do know, and we need to get that information out there. From what we've had, at least between the advent of COVID and now, you know, social media is a very strong tool of knowledge, impaction, and all that.
I also think that there's a need for age-appropriate information. It's very critical.
Okay.
Because for actually from when a child is young, start talking reproductive health, your parts of your body, you're getting somewhere. You're telling your child your private parts and your good parts, and then you build it up every year. You add more information, and they are age-appropriate information, even for family planning. It doesn't always have to start from family planning. It can start from what does my body tell me, puberty. You know, you're building it up, and then when the child gets to that appropriate age, you start talking about sexual education, sexual rights, reproductive health rights. They need to know this.
Okay.
Because
if we don't tell them
powerful
anyway,
tool. Yes.
they're going to get it.
Yes.
One way or another.
Internet is a very powerful tool, and something also peer-to-peer. What they don't get from you, they get from the internet, or they get from their friends.
Yeah.
Doctor, still on this same matter. In urban Nigeria, it's easier.
Yeah.
Internet of things and stuff like that.
In rural Nigeria.
In rural Nigeria, it's culture first. It's religion first. It's our way of life first. How do we get this information to them? What do they need to know? There are quite a number of Nigerians are very, very traditional, because you will leave Lagos to go to your home state for certain festivities and all of that. What are the things we should be telling them? Because, I mean, the person you saw last year has suddenly grown old, but the next time you see the person the following year. So how do we get this information to them?
Okay, so for me, at that level, at the community level, a lot of advocacy and a lot has been done in advocacy. And when we talk about the youth and the young people, we know now in Nigeria we have a youth bulge, so we need to give them that information. So coming down to their level. I do also know that in schools there's a lot of family life and HIV education going on, a curriculum that interposes sexual education in some subjects. But also when we talk about youth, there are a lot of training our teachers, training the health workers, training the community leaders on how to appropriately address these youth and answer their questions. There's nothing like a youth coming to meet you and asking you a question and you're taken aback. So they need to be trained, capacity building, to provide appropriate answers. Because if you don't answer these children well, they would look for where to get the information. And I totally agree, the internet is not available, but then peer-to-peer is available. They learn from their teachers, people they look up to, and this is the time to start training them, build their capacity. There's a lot of training going on adolescent and youth sexual reproductive health. It's getting to the grassroots, but more needs to be done. This information can get there even without the internet.
Dr. Akitade, on the same matter.
Yeah.
You'll forgive me.
No, it's okay, it's fine, because I really want to add something to that as well.
Okay, add that quickly, because my question is a little different.
Okay, fine. You see, it's a global world now. Sometimes you realize that even the farmer has a way of communicating with the people in the real urban. You understand? How did they do this? And that's why we need to buttress this issue of peers to peers. We need to also, because all these documents that are there, the IUC materials that are there are also written in different languages. Yeah. You understand? So we need to get down to the grassroots. people in the rural settings, you will be amazed about what they know.
Oh, certainly, certainly. In fact, there are cultural, there are traditional family planning methods, and all of that. Those things are there, but getting the information to them is another thing altogether. Now, my question is around the fact that while they're growing, 14, 15, and the rest of them that you talked about earlier, telling them these things does not mitigate or reduce the body development. You tell them something, the body is feeling different. Getting them to do different from what their body is telling them, how do you do that?
Well, let me start by saying that those days, probably the ladies in the house will tell us that their period starts around 18, 19. I have had to deliver a girl, 12-year-old, because of these challenges that we're talking about. She got pregnant at 11 and she delivered when she was 12.
Ouch.
That is the challenge. I mean, we didn't have any more challenge because she's huge.
Well developed.
If she has a contracted pelvis, we're going to be talking about something different. So while we are talking to them concerning their period that started coming 10, 11 and all that, where we are putting, and that's why Dr. Johnson mentioned appropriate information for age. You understand? We don't tell them, go and have husband, go and bring husband. No. What we tell them is that when you do this, appropriate information. We have to begin. You don't say when man touch you, you will get pregnant. That's not.
That's what they used to tell us. That's what they told us. So we ran away from even our brothers when we were in our periods.
Brother, when you sit in class, you put something.
Yes.
So we give them appropriate information. You understand? And you will give this appropriate, and that's where the advocacy, the government have to come in. It has to be, because it has a direct effect on our economy. And that's why the government has to come in on this advocacy. The partners that are giving us this advice, they are not going to be here perpetually. So we must talk about how to hone the project and make it sustainable.
No. So which brings me to how much is the government supporting this advocacy?
Well, thank God I'm not government, so.
No, but you are in it, so you will know how much support is
part
coming.
of the advocacy is that we should get government to own these projects,
which they haven't done.
Which they have not done.
Yet.
They are participating. The ministry is participating, but how much of funding are they putting into this, and how much of collaboration are they having with the private sector? Because private sector have contributed and they have shown over a period of time that they can actually be part of the health system. Over 65% of service delivery of health are being provided by the private sector. So they are also very, very important when we walk through them.
What percentage again?
Over 65% of service delivery, health service delivery are given by the private sector. It could be higher in some states. Okay, so these sectors are also very, very important. So there is a total engagement that we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Well, you wanted to say something?
Yes. So we're going to say that for adolescents and youth, we don't actually talk about family planning because they don't have families to plan. We actually talk about life planning, where they are taught negotiation skills and various skills. Because as you said, this child is coming to meet you. Maybe she's pregnant, or how does she resist? And so we teach them, they are being taught negotiation skills and how to make better use of their life skills and all of that. So it's very critical that it's life planning for adolescents and youths, not family. They don't have family plan. They don't have families.
But one other thing that I think is relevant here, ladies and gentlemen, is that, the language of talking to young people today is a lot different. When Alera was growing up, the language was that of fear. If you do this, this will happen to you. If you touch a guy, you get pregnant. Is that not what you want?
Don't go near any man once your period starts. You will get pregnant if a man touches you. So of course you didn't even allow your brother touch. Those were the kinds of things that we were told.
Okay, well, if you can just speak to that very, very quickly, because there are parents listening also. How do we, in what ways should parents be talking to their young ones?
That word has been used there, and that is appropriate information. Appropriate information. How do they get pregnant? How do you protect yourself from being pregnant? How do you keep the hygiene? And that's why we said we're talking about reproductive health. Because if you get it wrong at that point, even from your period, not even somebody touching you, you realize that you may be infertile.
Okay.
Okay, so for me, talking to the adolescents and the youth, you have to start talking to them about, stopping your education, going to school, getting an education, making something good about yourself. If you get pregnant, you have to stay back from school and have your baby and take care of babies. And then how would you empower yourself?
Okay.
And how do you make sure you make the best use of your life?
Okay.
Choices.
So, of course, it's all about you shouldn't get pregnant at all until you want the baby.
And you can take care of the baby.
That's what this is all about.
Well, absolutely.
Knowledge,
Is power.
and go.
Knowledge is power. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Where pregnancy is wanted. We've been chatting with two doctors, Dr. Taiwo Johnson, Director, Post-Pregnancy Family Planning, as well as Dr. Tunji Akintade, immediate past Chairman, Association of General Private Medical Practitioners of Nigeria. Thank you very much, gentleman.
And lady.
Thank you very much, lady and gentleman.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I agree with you. Thank you very much.
World Contraception Day. Please, just go ahead.
Sunrise will return in just a moment with another interesting conversation. Please join us.
We have with us some executives of the Unilag Mascom Alumni Association. They're here to discuss the forthcoming Distinguished Lecture Series. Vincent Oyo is president of, is it OMCA you call it? OMCA, as well as Lekon Shote, who is treasurer. I like the combination. Thank you for coming here, gentlemen. So the president is here and the money man is here. Great. So where do we begin to spend the money? Let me begin with you. Mr. Shote, thanks for, beg your pardon, Mr. Oyo. This is the 14th edition. Fourth. Oh, beg your pardon, fourth edition. Maybe I'm looking 10 years ahead already.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you need to put on your glasses.
For being very ambitious on our behalf.
You see? I'm being ambitious.
Right.
Come on.
Right. You will still be going 14 years, 10 years from now.
But for starters, so those who may be hearing about the OMCA Distinguished Lecture Series for the first time, tell us about it.
Well, first, what is OMCA? It means University of Lagos Mascom Alumni Association, to which the chairman of channels is also a member. And how do we impact society? As journalists, as trained journalists, we are told that we are agenda setters. And so this is one of the efforts.
You said we are told.
Yes.
Are you?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
Please.
By the way, I'm a columnist, I write for Punch. Okay. So I engage in things like this. And this is one of the efforts to set agenda. And we've done it. Incidentally, also, the maiden edition lecture was presented by your chairman also, Mr. John Momo. And we think we need to be talking to Nigerians, especially with the kind of situation we find ourselves right now. Since I was listening to you while we were in the reception. There's insecurity. The economy is not too good. And then even the guests you had, they were talking about an agenda, which is reproductive issues and all that, you know. And I think, so that's essentially what the DLS is all about. We get somebody who is, who is knowledgeable about his subject, and then we get him to talk to us. And then we then have some panelists who will sit down and think through what he has said and respond. Try to expand his thoughts.
Okay,
so that,
Mr. Oyo, what is the topic for this year?
This year, we're looking at the subject of leadership and communication with the youth. Because we are now looking at...
the issue of leadership comes up again.
Yes, the anniversary of the NSAS, this thing, NSAS debacle that took place last year. And we are looking at that subject matter not necessarily because we want to apportion blame, so we're examining it from the point of view of, as I said, an agenda-setting organization and looking for solutions. And so when we choose these topics, we look for experts, we look for advocates who can examine the issues critically and begin to look at how we can find solutions to them. This year, for this particular edition, we are going ahead. There's something that is very, very important as far as this year's edition is concerned, which is that we instituted an entrepreneurship initiative.
My apologies.
Yes.
I'll come to it.
Okay.
I've seen it,
Okay.
and I think it's amazing. It's fantastic.
Okay.
But I'd like us to explore that topic a little deeper.
Okay.
Youth leadership, and then communication. From my experience,
Yeah.
and the advanced information and experience that you have given us, those of you who have gone ahead of us in the communication industry, there seems to be a challenge with communicating with the youths. Why is that? I mean, it wasn't like that when you were growing up, for instance. Well, it was like that, but I mean, somehow your parents were able to talk to you in a language you understood, your language, the language of the day.
Yeah.
Today, it seems it's difficult, if not almost impossible, to be able to communicate with the youth appropriately. Consequently, the gap in even reaching them between what we now know as Nigeria and Niger. How did we get there, and how do you see us reversing it?
I think we got there because we did not transition properly from the way that it used to be in our times to where we are today, where technologies and things have taken over. We also adopted, in the adoption of the various cultures from other parts of the world, we also did not take a look at our own system. What do I mean? When we're growing up and you are with your parents and visitors coming, you disappear, all right?
Maybe because there was no TV then.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, there was no TV, but...
No, even if you are watching TV,
yes.
you have to get up and go.
You still had to leave. The TVs came in the 60s and all of that, you know, and we were there there were telephones, but you disappeared. And your mother could talk to you with her eyes. And all of that.
Now they'll be asking you, Mommy, what is wrong with you?
What is wrong with your eyes?
Okay, so, you know, and as I said, we didn't transition properly. So we started living in flats and all of that. Your neighbor you may not see your neighbor in the next 3 months and all of that. Then we got to the situation where your parents started telling you, don't talk to strangers and all of that. All those kinds of things. Whereas my grandmother says to me, when somebody is older than you, you see an elderly person, greet the person because he might or she might be able to tell you about something that is ahead of you or in front of you. So that for me was important. An incident that happened, I remember somewhere in the UK. I got to a lift. I met a young lady there and I said, good evening, just before we're both going in. And she says to me, I don't talk to strangers, you know, and all of that.
In the UK?
Yes, so I kept quiet. We both got into the lift. At that point, I chose to be mischievous. So we got up to the 14th floor and she was supposed to come down. And so as she was getting out, I said, good night. And she screamed. And I was wondering. So okay. So what should have happened, I think, is the question. So in the adoption of some of those cultures, we should not have allowed
Hours,
yes.
to be subsumed.
Yes, to be subsumed.
Well, now you can speak to that entrepreneurship competition that you talked about.
Okay. So here we are. We are talking about, I mean, the previous discussions, especially when you were taking on the economic issues. 70% of our youths, 70% of our population is actually our youths. Unemployment, perhaps 30, 40%. I don't know what the figures are, but it's close to that. The jobs are not there. So they themselves must begin to look inwards. Again, back in the day, remember, you had to go to the farm. 7 or 8 children in the house, you go to the farm and all that.
IT students automatically.
Okay. All right. So you learn something. So the thing to do, therefore, is to get back to what can you do for yourself if you get the right kind of support.
Okay. Mr. Shote, has their education prepared them for entrepreneurship?
That's a very good question. When we were in J school, in journalism school, we had to go out for the long back to for IT. I've forgotten the word we used to call it. It wasn't IT. It was vac job.
Vac job,
Attachment
yes.
or something.
No, it was vac job.
Vac job, yes.
You know, attachment or IT makes it look as if you are just in training. Vac job is like you are earning. So the orientation is that you are earning an income. I work with Daily Times. I work with Tribune. And so I had an idea that I was working to earn something. My father was an industrialist. He used to manufacture lace, textiles. And I recall that they would take me, and he had a big store at Tinubu Square in Lagos. And I was in Unilag. When I'm asking for my school fees, my father would give me some lace materials
To go and sell. You earn your keep.
Yes. And the only thing that was guaranteed was money for my textbooks and money for my pocket money. But my school fees, I had to, it was 30 naira per semester. But I had to earn it. If I didn't make up to that, that is 30, that's 90. If I didn't make it, then he will augment. If I made it, okay, the money, but even if I didn't make it, it means that at least you have worked, you know. So these things has to start from the home and from the school. And then, again, I went to Mayflower Primary School. Yes. I recall that the house, official residence of our headmaster, we built it. I remember making blocks as a 10-year-old, 9-year-old, making blocks, you know. But things have sort of changed these days.
Yeah, but for a 10-year-old, that would have been great excitement.
I was excited. They enlist you in the carpentry club, plumbing club, electrical club. We did stuff. In primary school, you had 5 ridges, one for yam, one for groundnut, one for maize, one for cassava. And then you had one bed for pepper, tomatoes, they call vegetable, something flower bed or something like that. And so you had that. So we grew up, and then of course you had morning job that you are going to do. And then from what the proceeds of the farm, we had
employment.
Food. Yeah. So we had the orientation, and so that's a school now, in addition to what we got in secondary school. I think somehow that changed. Some students, some parents would then go to the school and cut the hair of the school teacher who asked their daughters not to make their hair. And so everything became unruly. And you know, in any case, you were talking about how did we get to where we are. The world is flat. And just as the president has hinted, we are now no longer just Nigerians. We are, if you like, international. We may be living in Lagos, but we are off the world, if you understand what I'm saying. And then the digital economy. Access to a lot of information that parents don't even have an idea of what is going on. A lot of people, they have this Android phone now. A lot of they don't even know how to use.
This conversation is definitely unending. But Prof, you beg your pardon.
Thanks.
maybe who knows whether you're able to.
No, he's the one who is heading for that.
Tell us about the features of this lecture and what is different this year.
Well, the feature is the fact that this year, because of COVID, we are not as expectant as in terms of the number of what the attendance will be. So obviously we'll be looking at the fact that there are certain people who would be, because we're looking at the world now. I mean, there are our members are strewn all over the world who will be able to join us virtually. The students, some students of Unilag are still there doing their exams and all of that.
Okay. Well, this is your flyer, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so who's your guest speaker?
Our guest speaker is Mr. Femi Falano. He will be examining the subject matter, and our chairman is, for the day, is the former president himself, Chief Losin Omokodion. Who was the... Okay.
And who are those three?
They will be the people, the
panelists.
The panelists, yes.
Okay. Right.
Leko Tufodurin or Fredo Hokwa and the lady.
Okay. Well, of course, the venue is...
It's the GF Ajayi
main auditorium.
Okay.
When is this happening?
On the 30th.
Okay, next week, Thursday.
Next week, Thursday.
Okay.
Yes.
Next week, Thursday?
Yes.
It's just a few days away.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the time would be...
11 a.m.
11 a.m.
Yeah.
And it's virtual. Is it virtual
It's
and
both.
physical?
It's both.
Physical and virtual.
Okay.
We did that because, just as he has hinted, some of us are in Australia, some in America, some in South Africa. They will not be able to, and they would like to participate. They want to know what is going on. And of course, we are aware of the COVID protocols.
It's only for your members, right?
No. It's for, the subject is for every Nigerian.
Every Nigerian.
So any Nigerian who wants
any Nigerian
can join
who
you.
wants can join.
How do they get the link?
It's actually
On the flyer?
on the flyer, and it's also on our platform. We are also engaged in other marketing activities to ensure that people are able to catch up with it.
So I assume there will be a YouTube. Okay, where?
Yes, there's a Zoom link
on Facebook.
Yes.
Okay, the information is right there on the flyer. Okay. Well, since there is going to be an entrepreneurial competition, I'm wondering how is that only for ex-Unilag students or
no? It's for the current students.
The current students
mass communication. Mass
Yes.
communication students.
Whether you are in year 1, year 2,
3.
and this year we had 20
20 contestants.
pitches for during the competition, and so the prize will be awarded to the.
What's the prize?
Well, it's a modest sum of 0.5 million.
Wait a minute, that's modest.
It is for what you call startup. For a startup, yeah.
Mr. Treasurer, that's modest.
Well,
a lot of money. It's just
obviously,
well, you know, inflation. We just heard somebody, Mr. Johnson of Cowrie Access. Professor Waleke, who incidentally used to also be a columnist with the Punch, talking about 20% inflation rate. You know, so we we think that it could be more.
Okay.
But at least let's start from somewhere.
Yes, we're starting from there, and we're expecting that,
with time, you'll up
yes.
it. Okay.
Well, it's definitely a beginning.
And again, your chairman has been kind enough to support this effort.
We trained him well.
He's probably listening to you.
Let me add this, because I think you are hinting at why NSAS. NSAS.
I'm sorry, Mr. Shete. We could go on and on about it, but we are completely out of time on this segment.
Okay,
We still have to take another one. Well, we have to thank you this morning for being a part of this conversation. Vincent Oyo is president of UMCA, University of Lagos Masscom Alumni Association, as well as Lekon Shete, who is the treasurer of the association. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for your time this morning. The Sunrise is back after now to take on the
home stretch.
Do stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us thus far. We have a special guest in the house, Jedediah Uduak Peters.
Uduak.
Yeah. Otherwise...
Uduak.
Oh, God.
Abi? Uduak.
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 Okay. Otherwise known as Tito the Fire.
Yes, ma'am.
Please, can you just take me through how Jedediah Uduak becomes Tito?
So I was born Jedediah Uduak Tones, and then when I started entertainment, I needed to do a show, then a music show, where we needed to have names different from our Nigerian names or native names, and then we came up, myself and Coco, it was myself and AEME Pratt, so we had to come up with names that had a synergy, and that's where the Tito came from.
You just thought about Tito and that was it?
Yeah, I actually first heard it on, a radio station. A little kid made a phone call on the show and, hi, my name is Tito, and I just caught it from there. So when this show was about to start, I felt like that's going to be the new
Do you even know what
name.
Tito means? Bastard!
Yeah.
Well, it's likely that the name came from Bola Tito.
Yeah, well, Nigerian. Yeah.
That's the Nigerian origin.
Nigerian version.
Because there's one Tito Jackson.
Abroad. He said,
Yes.
It's a Nigerian radio station, right?
Yeah.
I told you.
Okay, Bola Tito. All right. So you burst into prominence in 2003 with Maje Kaja, which we saw earlier.
Yeah.
Now, so pardon me for asking, what's the background to that? Who were you going to jar with?
So I think that was the period where relationships, we were trying out. And then we had a hit, I got hit in one. And that was like my recovery inspiration. So I was saying, don't let's fight, And then it just turned out to be very big then, yeah.
It was a hit, huh?
Oh, it was. I can attest to that because we played it a lot on radio. Still do.
Maje Kaja. Okay, well, don't let us quarrel.
Well,
okay.
Tito, 2003 till now, it's quite some time. Something 18 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah. quite a lot of years gone. So, within then and now, what would you say have changed in music?
The sound has become, Nigeria here, the sound has become more professional. The quality of the mixing, the mastering back then, we are measuring, with international standards. So the world is now paying attention to us more. And we don't have borders anymore to the music. You do it today, the next day it's heard all over the world. Unlike then, you did a song here, it takes a while before it travels to other places. So those are basically, and then of course the technology in terms of promotion, the style of promotion these days, social media, you connect directly with the fans. So some of those.
Now, Majakaja was a lot more on radio. I mean, I remember, and I still do right now. Most certainly, the distance between Majakaja and Kokoro, is it Kokoro?
Kokoro. Yeah.
Okay, is quite a lot. What lessons would you say you have learned from promoting Majakaja that you are likely to deploy in Kokoro?
One of the key lessons is don't take breaks or long breaks.
That's because you took a break between 2000 and...
No, I actually had an album which I did release in 2019 that I featured. I did a good number of songs on the One Kiss album. I featured Nice, I featured Walter Kellerman, Beanie Man. So between then and now, that's a 3-year thereabout.
Okay.
What was happening in that hiatus?
Okay, so that period, the scene was changing a whole lot. And at that time, I also was trying to, rediscover my sound, and trying to get a direction for my sound, what I was going to do it. And that's when I came up with, okay, I'm going to call my own sound Ganta music. And Ganta is a fusion of, the Afro beat, a fusion of music with influences from Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, and of course, Jamaica. The reason being, these are places I have passion and some connection with, and then I love music from those places.
So where did the name Ganta come from?
Ganta is a city in Liberia.
Okay.
Yeah.
They have their own peculiar dance, because it's like every kind of music today has a peculiar kind of dance.
Yes, they have some. They're very percussive. So like here we have a lot of percussions, the gongo and the rest of it. They too have, a lot of percussion, and I love percussions in the music.
Okay. So do we have a peculiar dance for Ganta music?
Oh yeah.
Okay. You want to give us a sample? Seated?
Very funny.
I'm asking.
It's a traditional thing to kind of like, shake
their...
Okay, that's Ganta.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Tito the fire.
Well, this is not going to go away very soon. Well, you went away for too long, and then that's where that was. That's how that has become. You have had some influences, and certainly something of relevance. What are some of these influences, and how have they influenced your music?
One of my major influences was growing up, my mom. Right, she was the first person who exposed me to music. She doesn't like to hear that I'm doing music, but she was the one who, while growing up, would say, they're going to play Don Williams on the radio. They'll play Michael Jackson. You press pause record. Once Michael Jackson's song starts playing, unpause it for me so that you can record the song. Then we didn't have the streaming and the rest of it. So while doing that, I started getting to know all the songs. And that was where the passion for singing came from. And then, of course, Afrobeat, Fela's music. Right now, Burna Boy, Whiskey, Thames, all artists who are working so hard just kind of shape the music. Influence, yeah.
But you featured in You featured Grammy Award winners, dancehall star Benny Man and Kellerman.
Walter, yeah.
Yeah, Walter Kellerman. Do you still have those relationships?
Oh, definitely. In June this year, India celebrated the World Yoga Day, and I got a call to be on the song. The song was, the Prime Minister selected artists from all over the world, from Namibia, from Nigeria. So I was the one who represented from Nigeria. Walter was, represent Walter and Lyra from South Africa. So it was from that relationship that, that connection came.
And how has it been? How did that influence what you do?
One thing I picked up from working with Walter is he had other things he had passion for. But at some point, he left every other thing and put his energy. And within 5 years of focusing and saying this is what he wants to do, he won a Grammy Award.
Wow.
Yeah, and then his dedication, and then the humility, all of that, those things, when you see them, you just feel like, and then you get to understand also that it's a beautiful thing to do. I mean, to be a musician every day.
Okay, let's talk very quickly about Kokoro.
Yeah.
Because you said, I saw you call it Kokoro the other time.
Kokoro, yeah.
That's the peculiar thing about Yoruba language. Tell us about Kokoro.
So Kokoro is that story of frenemy situation that we face every day.
Kokoro Tonje for.
Okay.
Okay.
So how did Urua come? No, don't answer that one yet. Okay, so go on. so it's about frenemies.
Yeah.
This is Uruak who is giving us proverbs in Yoruba. Okay. All right. Tell us about Kokoro first, and tell us about how you are now giving us proverbs in Yoruba.
So this, we all have experiences that sometimes touch you to the marrow. So I was trying to tell experiences that, really test your spirit, and then it questions a lot of things. It questions who you trust. It questions, who's your close friend. So just trying to let people get into that. Look, we've all experienced this sometime.
Okay, now tell us about the proverb part.
Yeah, how it came. Sometimes I still sit down and think, how did this come? It's just.
Were you born in Lagos?
I was born in Ganta, Liberia.
But they don't speak Yoruba there.
They don't. Yeah, but I schooled in Songwater. Went to all my schools were in the southwest. So more like I did Yoruba in WAEC, and I got, you don't want to know.
Credit.
No, I got a pass, or is it P or whatever?
Really?
Yeah, but that's a good. I tried.
Did you score same thing in ABBU? Don't answer that.
Which he didn't do. Tito the Fire.
Yes.
Well, that's his stage name. His real name is Jedediah Uduak Peters. Thank you very much for being our Artist of the Week today.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, quickly, is anything you're working on right now?
Oh, yes. About to do a challenge. The Kokoro Challenge just started.
Kokoro.
What's that again?
The Kokoro Dance Challenge. So, Kokoro Challenge, people send in a video, creative video. Either you do a dance video, you do a skit, a comedy skit that describes scenarios of frenemies, or, anything creative you come up with, do the dance, tag me on my different pages at Tito the Fire. And then we post it, and then we select winners from, all platforms. They get cash prizes, just, fun thing for the fans.
Okay, so Tito the Fire Challenge. Oh dear. How many are we gonna have in a lifetime? What kind of challenge did you have in your?
Thank you, Jerry. Tito. Thank you very much for coming. And so that wraps up Sunrise for today. I'm Alera Edu, wishing you all the best. And don't forget, the coronavirus is still roaming around. Look after yourself.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful weekend.